Welcome to Specifically About Quality, the podcast by Qualitywise, where we explore the principles, practices, and challenges of modern quality management. We will discuss key concepts, share real-world examples, and bring clarity to the complexities of quality management. In each episode, we provide insights for quality managers and professionals, helping you lead with confidence, ensure compliance, and drive continuous improvement. This podcast is here to support your work and your impact. Clear, focused, practical. Let's get into today's episode. Hi everyone, and welcome again to the Qualitywise podcast. I'm Agata Lewkowska, quality management system expert with years of experience in automotive industry. Today, I am with Christopher Scott.
And I'm Christopher Scott, an expert in quality assurance and operational excellence in the automotive industry as well. At the beginning, we want to thank you for your interest in Specifically About Quality by Qualitywise. We invite you to follow this podcast and leave your comments. And for us, it's a real sign that Qualitywise recordings are needed. Thank you again.
Today's episode is about a topic many companies think they've mastered. I believe so, they mastered this, but generally very few actually use to drive real improvement. So we are going to talk today about control plans that go beyond documentation and actually influence day-to-day production.
Exactly. Many control plans were created just for PPAP submission. This is to the customers, the OEMs, and later to support audits for when the customers come on site or you have an IATF 16949 certification by a third party. Today, we'll show you how to make them a living tool for process control, risk aversion or reduction, and customer satisfaction.
So why most control plans fail to drive improvement? Christopher, let's be honest. Why do so many control plans fail to deliver value?
There's three common issues in probably my experience as well as yours as we're collating together these sort of reasons. I think reason one is it's created only for PPAP approval, not updated or fully updated afterwards. So continuously as a living document. Number two would be that it's written by engineers or qualities in a standalone or siloed environment, which means there's no true input from production or other stakeholders in this process. And number three is that it's not integrated into daily process control. Operators don't even see them. They know nothing about these control plans or these special documents. But here, with a small sort of idea that we're looking at, operators could not see them. But the control plan is transferred to other documentation such as work instructions or standard operating procedures or the methods of manufacturing. Depends on what you call it in your organization. But essentially, it's a standard operation, which is the best method to teach the job. That's the idea.
Yes. And I often see copy-paste control plans from similar products that ignore the specific risks of the current processes, yes? But I would also add a number 4 reason. Why most control plans fail? Because they are not meeting the requirements in IATF 16949, which are not only in the specific point dedicated to control plans. Anyone who would like to read this point is 8511, dedicated only to control plans. But we'll find more requirements on this what should be in the control plan, like error-proofing, MSA, reaction plans, and even using statistical tools. And this is always something which is maybe a little bit neglected because it's not in this main point dedicated to control plans. So pay attention to these examples which I gave you now, okay?
Yeah, and I think as a conclusion why most control plans fail, as the beginning of the topic, I would just say that if your control plan isn't a reflection of your current risks, your process controls that you're actually doing day to day, and your operator's reality, it's just shelfware. It means nothing.
So, Chris, let's now shift to solutions. What should a control plan look like if it's going to drive improvement?
Well, it should identify true process risks linked to the FMEA, as we talked about in our previous podcast, is to define controls that are meaningful and achievable. So this is proving during the pre-serial production and validation stage within the PQP, so the phase 3 to 4, as you're looking between the design and the validation of the processes. Be visible and usable on the shop floor or in the Gemba, if you're from the Japanese mythology. So as the control plan itself is transferred into other documents on the shop floor, like I said, SOPs, so standard operating procedures and so on. And then it'd be updated when a process changes or problems occur internally or externally by the customer.
Exactly. And a good control plan isn't static. It's a tool for managing change and improving process capability. However, let's be careful now with modifying control methods in this what was previously agreed with the customer. Because you may be in the situation that changing control method can drive you to do a new PPAP for the customer. This must be agreed, communicated to the customer firstly. PPAP manual is saying that you need to notify the customer if you are changing the control method. So please be careful only here in that situation.
Yeah, and that's great in terms of the advice. I would like to give an example from Qualitywise, what we did with a client of ours. So one plant I worked with, the control plan indicated that the control method was an operator self-check. So they validate their own work at critical stages in the build or the assembly sequence. It was linked to an additional document based on which the operators signed off on control charts. So like SPC chart, every shift, they're updating the trend, as it were. And we saw a clear reduction in defects because they caught the variation early. They could see a correlation and a trend, something was about to run out of control. And that was a great opportunity to work with one of our clients.
Okay. So from my experiences, I saw a similar case where the control plan was linked to layered process audits because supervisors checked key controls weekly and the deviations were used for corrective actions. Of course, let's remember that layered process audits are not verifying exactly the parameters. Yes, this is not the aim of that kind of audit done on the shop floor. However, it supports if the main things which are required by the control plan, like for instance, in the control method that we need to do some records, yes, if they are done, layered process audit is perfect for this. So it was audited to improve the process by verifying alignment with control plan, yes, and this was really beneficial as well.
I think what I'd like to add, just to elaborate on this discussion, because it's quite interesting for the listeners, I think. More recently, working with a supplier as an OEM, something that I saw was they wanted to use a 3D scanner to validate their first off production, their middle and last off, and that's okay. But they're also considering manufacturing gauges, so checking fixtures. Now, the PPAP is approved only for the 3D scanning. It's not approved from an MSA perspective for the checking fixtures, and the checking fixtures need to go through some sort of gauge R&R study to prove reliability and reproducibility of less than 10%. So there's an example, as Agata was explaining, you need to tell the customer when you're going to do a change like this. It might be a better change for efficiency because it's faster than using a 3D scanner, but it still needs to be verified that it can discriminate between good and bad parts.
Good example. Good that you said about this. So let's now discuss how to build a control plan that works. Okay, let's dive into practical steps for our listeners. Now, some of our other listeners may ask, how can I build a control plan that really helps production? Yes. And now we will discuss this maybe in a simple approach, how we teach at Qualitywise. Okay. So the step one is involve the right people. Chris, just comment this, what I've said.
Control plans should be built by a cross-functional team. So this is people like quality, process engineering, or you might know them as production engineering, product engineers who design the product, production leaders, the team leaders, supervisors, managers, and in some cases, maintenance, because they understand the systems that are going to be used to control the product as it's made.
So close to this, what you've said is to link control plan to process FMEA. Okay, don't guess risks. Use your process FMEA to define which steps need control, which type of control should be used, prevention or detection. We have touched this topic a little bit in episode 8 dedicated to FMEA. If you wish, just go and listen this one because this is really specifically dedicated to FMEA. Okay.
Great. And step 3 would be to define clear, actionable controls. So as an example, to give the audiences to listen, if you can try and visualize this, instead of visual inspection, I would say that operator checks parts against a standard sample every 2 hours. So it's got a defined frequency. They document the results based on a control chart. So it's logging the problem, they're checking against the standard. And of course, you will not write that long sentence in every single control plan. It's difficult to do that. Most of the case that we see with our clients, our suppliers, when you're an OEM, is things like a linked document, which is a working instruction, which is always updated, has revision control, and it meets the ISO requirement and the IATF requirements of document control. So it needs to have clear, actionable controls for the operator to work towards.
And this what really works as another step is I will call it make a control plan visible. Of course, it depends on your organization. If your decision is to expose control plan on the shop floor and having control plan being used by operators, or you are just cascading some information from control plan to work instructions or associated documents connected to, for instance, control. However, you can post key parts of control plan at workstations. I will say in these words, yes. You can use checklist and integrate into shift handover, yes. So the classic example will be here, verification of job setup on separate checklist, yes. This is a must to prove the verification job setup. This is also the requirement in ITF 16949 to have this verification of job setup in the control plan. So pay attention. You are doing this, of course. People don't have to know this is inside the control plan, but this is how you apply the certain solutions from control plan.
And step 5 is to keep it alive. We say this about the FMEA in episode 8, and it's a living document, and control plans are no different. So update the process changes after you need to make a change, after any problem-solving activity and lessons learned, after customer complaints, when the customer has raised either a non-conformance or something called the supplier corrective action report against you as a supplier. It should evolve. It should always be updating and changing as you're learning more and more through continuous improvement.
And the last thing, what I would say here is you can also do a kind of audit of effectiveness of your control methods in control plans. So this is not just, is it filled in, but is this control effective? Is it preventive defects? So from reality, think about your complaints. Last maybe complaint you obtained in the organization. Was it connected with the ineffective control method that let this defect go to the customer? Let me also emphasize that in ITF, there is a point dedicated to monitoring and measurement of manufacturing processes, and you need to verify that the process flow diagram, PFMEA, and control plan are implemented. This means simply that they are really working effectively, yes? And to verify the effectiveness, when you know that there are some gaps, I will advise you to come back to the point in ITF dedicated to control plan, where you again have among the requirements the situations in which you have to update the control plan, yes? You even don't have to obtain an official complaint from your customer to start updating your control plan, yes? You can only know that your non-conforming parts are in transport to the customer, yes? Even when you're doing any changes that affect product, manufacturing processes, measurement, logistics, your supply chain, because you're changing a supplier, or you are adding additional station and your volumes will be increased, yes? Or even based on the risk analysis like FMEA, you should consider checking if your control methods are still effective, yes? So you also can have in your organization the defined frequency of updating control plan, but please be careful with this. In one organization, I had an annual update of control plans, but there were simply too many to update in such a time frame. So after 1 year, we got a bottleneck, and we need to simply change this requirement because we wouldn't pass audit without non-conformity in this area. Okay, so now let's go to the examples of real improvement driven by the control plan. Chris, do you have any favorite, let's call it success story?
Yeah, so a tier 1 supplier that I work with, part of Qualitywise, we had a great consultation with them to help them. They managed to reduce the line stoppages by 30% after discussing control plans and adding the recommendation that they need to have statistical process control monitoring on critical parameters. You were measuring the wrong things that weren't adding any value. They were stable. There was no changes. The variation wasn't being caused by those other issues. The main thing that they needed to look at was what was really driving scrap and what was really slowing the production lines down. So I worked with them, consulted, told them what they need to change to measure the real important things. And operators actually use tablets to see trends in real time. So that company invested in tablets, which was great. They moved away from just the dry pen board, as we would call it, or the chalkboard. They stopped doing that up bits of paper and they evolved into new technologies, which was great to see. The operators absolutely loved it.
So this was actually the example about application of statistical process controls which must be reflected in such document like control plans. But let's remember that other requirement is saying that also SPC or just statistical tools must be also present in FMEA. Okay, so this is also to meet the requirements from QMS. So fantastic. Another example is that even by adding torque verification with Agata devices and assembly can also influence the scrap ratio, yes, because this will be controlled according to the defined method described in control plan, yes. And don't forget to train your operators if you are changing something in the control plan, especially connected to the method, because people are those working force who will be doing this, yes, and they have to be aware of what is changed in this regard.
And that's what we mean by control plans that drive real improvement. It's not just paperwork. It's not just a tick box exercise. It's actual process capability.
If you're listening and thinking our control plans aren't doing this, you're not alone. The good news is, with the right approach, any organization can turn control plans into a valuable tool for improvement.
At Qualitywise, we help companies build effective control plans through training, workshops, and audits. Whether you need to revise existing plans or develop new ones linked to your FMEA, we can support you. And today we've prepared a free resource to help you get started. Control Plan Checklist for Continuous Improvement. A simple guide to review your current control plans and identify gaps. You can download it at qualitywise.pl under resources.
Thank you for listening to Specifically About Quality. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with your colleagues and subscribe for future episodes. Let's make quality a driver for real improvement, not just compliance. See you next time.